Hey guys, how's it going? All right. Blaze Blackwater, how you doing, man? Forget about it. Wagner. Noah, how you guys doing? All right. So, I will be doing YouTube lives now every morning from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. just to help you guys get started with your day, figure out what's going on in the market, find the key levels, and if we get a trade in during the live, we'll jump in on it. Well, at least I'll be jumping in on it. You can watch me as I break it down as to why I jump in, where I put my stop loss, why I place my stop loss there, and why I give myself the targets that I do. But yeah, and if we don't, we'll have the setup ready for whenever I give signals inside the community, and then we can jump in on it together there. Could you do TA for Cubic? Yeah, we could do TA for Cubic as well. Initially, I'm going to start every live by looking at Bitcoin, finding out what it's doing. And you look too serious in your thumbnail. I'm sorry, man. So the goal of the thumbnail is just to be consistent with the same thumbnail over and over again. And like while we're doing these lives, we'll be discovering what's trending and what's like going on in the market, and I'll be adjusting the thumbnail after the fact, so that you anyone who's like maybe new to the channel can get like a vibe of what we were looking at before. Or if you guys want to like refer back to a video, then I can change the title and change the thumbnail based on what we spoke about, so that it'd be easier for you guys to refer back to like any of the other stuff we spoke about. Can you check on SUI chart? Pumped hard last night. Yeah, we were talking about how it could potentially move up pretty high yesterday. We can take a look at SUI too. So yeah, let's take a quick dive on Bitcoin so we can at least control our bias for what we're going to be expecting with any altcoin trades, if you guys want to do altcoin trades, because Bitcoin is the boss. It drives the market. So if Bitcoin says we're going down, then we should expect a correction from the altcoins too. But let's take a peek. So let's zoom out really quick on the daily and see where Bitcoin's currently at, because it is just non-stop on a rampage running. So it's the technical target for the structure that we broke out of is this falling wedge structure here. Based on the construction of these formations, like what's happening in the background is we're grabbing all the liquidity along the way down. And every time we created a low, we're grabbing a new low, grabbing the newly added liquidity from people jumping into longs, newly added liquidity taken, right? Over and over and over again. We're just sweeping all the liquidity. But what's happening on the opposite side is we're adding more and more liquidity. It's stacking. So every time we have a correction, you got to think about the order flow of funds, like what's going on in the background. Every time we have a break of structure, that gives someone a strong high to put their stop loss guard and to evaluate their leverage in a way where if they want to control their risk to the point where they get liquidated at their area where they're preparing to put their stop loss just to further protect their funds, then these are all liquidation levels too, right? And now we're coming up like a domino effect and grabbing all that liquidity. But the large majority of the liquidity from this structure is between 92K, which we're currently at now, like we're at 93.7, and 95.7K right here. In this zone here, there's $6 billion worth of liquidity, which can be used as exit liquidity. So if you're a market maker and you're looking for a good exit plan with the least amount of slippage, like this could be a location where you'd want to exit. So I'm anticipating that we're likely going to see some resistance, like strong amount of resistance between the level we're at now and about 96K, where the previous point of control is from this range here. If that rejection causes us to lose this value area, we could end up coming right back down to the previous value area around 88K, right? So we got to be really mindful that we're at an area of concern where this crazy move up could actually be put to an end. However, if we stabilize inside the value area and we get a break of structure for a continuation, then we could very, very, very easily see us get to the value area high again around 101K. So we're kind of at a really close area where Bitcoin's going to be forced into like a make it or break it moment. so we can see whether or not we can actually get close to the measurable target of this structure. And the measurable target, like I said before, is the top of the formation here. And we'll see if we get there. So we just gotta zoom in and see if we're getting that proper acceptance. Like if we look at the daily right now, we're building a doji structure right now because like the candle, it's got 11 hours left, so a lot could still happen. But if this closes as a form of doji, think of that as a form of indecision, or at an area where a decision's about to be made. Because if you look at a doji and you zoom in on the lower time frames, it's almost always an incomplete double top or an incomplete confirmation. And if we zoom in on the hourly here, this is the start of the daily candle here. So we came up and now we're coming down. So we're kind of got like this incomplete potential confirmation for continuation off the value area low. Or we're building an incomplete potential like double top here. And we'll see what happens. But I'm expecting for us to range, but I expected us to range a little bit longer here too. And I closed my long a little bit early because we grabbed a bunch of historical liquidity in this area and we kind of had like a local SFP, so I closed my long and then shortly afterwards it just held up on the VWAP and we just started to leg back up even further. But still 5x my risk, but there are going to be a lot more opportunities, so I'm not too concerned about missing on this little move here. So right now we have a hourly order block above us, like right above us now. Let's see if we can box this zone really quick. All right, and let's zoom in a little bit further, 15-minute. And let's see if we can narrow this down a little bit more. We got a double bottom structure. We got the break of the neckline already. So there's a chance for us to return back up. So from here, let me just send this to backwards here. Visual order, send it back. That way my candles are on top of it here. We get a Fibonacci retracement from this high to this local low. And we can niche this down a little bit further. So I surrounded my golden pocket and the 786 level. We are within an hourly order block. It begins to be mitigated much sooner. But in this area, we now have the confluence of the ceiling of the 786 being in flush with the 15-minute order block here, and it being within an hourly order block, and we have the confluence of the 786 and the golden pocket. So in this box zone, we can prepare for a potential lower time frame change character, and then start targeting. Our first barrier would be the value area high, but if we get acceptance inside the value area, we can start targeting the value area low, and then we can anticipate Bitcoin to actually begin to range in this area. But if we look at the liquidity heat map, let's see. Let's go to liquidation heat map. Well, I'm going to zoom out really quick first before I go into liquidation heat map, and I want to see how long it's been since we've had this massive correction around 90K. Actually, we'll start from the top, the all-time high, because now we're coming after liquidity. Let's see where most of the weight of liquidity is from the top to where we currently are at. So 92 days, right, between the high and to where we are. So when we look at the liquidity heat map, we need to have a time frame that surrounds that 92 days. We were looking at CAS last. Let's look at Bitcoin here. So 92 days. We got 3 month. We can do 3 month, and that's 90 days. I think that's good enough. Okay, let's do 6 month because it's not actually including the full. There we go. Okay. So we can see after all these local highs here that we've got a large amount of liquidity above each location. And I'm surprised to see that we have quite a bit above 99K too. Like we have 5.11 billion just at 99.8K. And every price decimal like along the way down, there's at least 2 to 3 billion as well. So we grabbed a lot of liquidity at 89K. There was about $8 billion just at 89,000. But the next area where we're at right now, it's a little bit cold where we are now, but it starts to heat up again at like 95.4. There's $3 billion that start there. Yeah, and then it gets pretty heavy again after that. So our next high liquidity zone is at like 95.4K. And you can mark that on your chart. I usually mark it as like a horizontal line like this that I plan on deleting later. So 95.400. And I'll label it high liquidity zone. Cool. So now I want to look at the lower time frames. I can use this area with confidence. The thing with high liquidity zones, think them like giant magnets that draw the price up, but doesn't mean we won't stack more liquidity to help us get there through price suppression and ranging here. Okay, so that's pretty much it for Bitcoin. We can look at the crypto bubbles as well and see what is currently trending today. And like right now we have IMX up quite a bit. We are talking about SUI in the chat. SUI is up 22%. If we just, and the crypto bubbles, you can just click around and it'll push away all the stuff. So IMX and SUI are on a huge run. So let's first take a look at SUI because we had a request to look at that. And then we can look at cubic for vacation and then go from there. Good morning. Too many of my channels at live at the same time. Yeah, I hear you. This is kind of like the traders peak hour. So a lot of people will be going live at the same time. All right, so SUI and IMX, I would take a look at this and see if there's any because we're in an uptrend, we would kind of want to look for the contrarian setup, right? Unless there's something we can do for a continuation. So we'd be looking for a reversal, areas that SUI or IMX might have a harsh correction, and we can give ourselves like a good measurable target for those corrections. But Bitcoin still has some room to grow, so I feel like it might not be the end for most of these assets. Like one thing you can do as well when you're looking at the crypto bubbles, like you can look at like what obviously is doing really well, and then you can use the RSI heat map like this, refresh it, and see where it is relative to on its RSI to save yourself some time. So like here, we got a massive majority of assets that are in the overbought kind of area right now. And we only have a few that aren't. We have we have Pump, which is on its way up to the 50 level on its RSI. Whenever you see these little red lines or green lines, it basically is a representation that they are starting to shift and move to a new that direction. So I wouldn't say look at because it kind of got rugged. But Pump and Bell, these are still on the low side, so we could look at assets like this while everything else is pumping and seeing if there's any thing that's about to give it some more relative strength, because right now it has quite a bit of weakness against the rest of the market. But yeah, you can see that SUI and all that stuff is a part of this list. So let's go take a look at SUI's price action. Let's zoom back in on Bitcoin's. And we'll see if we get the confluence we need here. Let's zoom out. So yesterday, we were talking about the measurable target for SUI. I was kind of in disbelief for the target, but we just teleported there. Like, we had this double bottom structure here, bouncing off of a massive core area. If we zoom out on the 4 hour, we have this range bound demand zone here. That if we retest it, like, we built this giant falling wedge similar to Bitcoin with SUI, and the big conduit for the move was this neckline break where a lot of buy side liquidity was resting. And we came up, we broke, we had a confirmation on the lower time frames, and then now we're running up towards the measurable base target. If you guys are wondering how I got this measurable base target, it's pretty simple. Whenever you have a double bottom structure, you got to think of the pace of the volume that's going on in the background. And if we maintain that pace after we had the break, it gives you an idea of where we could go. And then you want to look for, based on the pathing to that target, the barriers along the way up. The barriers that I was concerned about was this local resistance here. We blasted right through it like it wasn't even there. And then we had this area here where we had quite a bit of confluence for sell pressure. We have a previous POC, a previous value area low. We hit it recently as a strong level of resistance. That's what's helped build a large amount of liquidity stacking here, which we are now grabbing. And that could also result in an extension to the target to bring us to higher levels. But right now we're kind of like inside of a valley area, trying to confirm acceptance into it through a break of structure. If we zoom in here, we can see that we barely struggled. Let me just send this back. There we go. We had a little bit of a struggle. We built a regression trend. Regression trends are usually a result of people stacking way too much money into shorts, and then we keep grabbing the liquidity along the way up. And then we get these little pullbacks as a result to some of the orders. So we broke through that relatively quickly. A lot of people anticipate this as resistance, actually. And right now we're trying to consolidate for potential continuation or reversal. So if we get our key level, it's right here. So we don't want that broken if you want to keep going up. If this breaks, we get a change of character. We get a break of local support that's been holding it up for like 3 taps now, which could drive the price down to, honestly, not that far. The momentum-based target for this would likely just bring us back down to this valley area low. Yeah, if Bitcoin drives the price up to this short confluence zone, if we get the correction here, then SUI should have a correction roughly around its local highs and build a larger potential double top structure. If Bitcoin closes with a higher high, instead of getting the change of character confluence that we normally need, if we get a closure above here, then we can start thinking that Bitcoin's going to be targeting this crazy amount of liquidity at 95.4. And then that would drive SUI's price relative to that to here, because you got to think of the chain, the pairing chain influence, right? Bitcoin's going to move Ethereum through its pairing influence. And because SUI has a lot of Ethereum pairing liquidity, Ethereum's going to move SUI. So it's going to cause a domino effect. So you're going to have to watch Bitcoin quite a bit. Even better if you want a more direct influence look, keep a close eye on Ethereum, because it's going to dictate where SUI is likely going to go. If you look at the other dominance chart, for example, like everything's kind of moving similarly to that chart, and everything that is basically is moving alongside Bitcoin. Anything that's not has relative weakness, and you should actually be careful with some of those assets, because if they have relative weakness, everything else is running up and they're not moving, then that means there's a lot of a lack of investor interest in that asset, and there could be something wrong with it. So you got to do a deeper dive and see what's going on with it. Cubic, you have to leave in 4 minutes. Yeah, let's take a peek at Cubic really quick. Let's see here. We have a Cubic chart. We looked at it a million times by now. The last time we looked at it was apparently the 14th of May, though. Okay, so it's been a little while since we looked at Cubic. Cubic finally broke its downtrending momentum. That's been holding it down since its like previous high around 43502. I'm not saying all those zeros. We double topped. We broke the downtrend momentum, and kind of similar to how we're looking at Bitcoin's falling wedge structure, you can assume that there's liquidity above these local highs that's yet to be taken, right? And that could help drive price up for Cubic. Cubic has quite a bit of, I can see it having some relative strength too, and pumping at a higher rate than Bitcoin, just because of the fact that it's got some crazy bullish news with its recent report of 15 million transactions per second being one of the best blockchain tokens, technically, in terms of transactions per second in the space right now, like the entire block, like everything that's been going on, everything that's been created so far. We had a break of this momentum. We retested off of, I wouldn't say the momentum itself, other than this little wick here, but we definitely retested off of the previous value area's point of control. Small rejection off the value area high, then we eventually broke through, and now we're getting acceptance inside of this macro value area right here, which is an incredibly important value area for Cubic. We've ranged inside this value area for 136 days. Just like how Bitcoin is currently trying to get acceptance into its macro range from its value area low right here. Right? Zoom in on the daily really quick. Right, we're trying to get acceptance inside this range that we were in from November to February. Right? This is the value area low here. And we're trying to get that break of structure continuation acceptance into the value area so we can anticipate a move potentially to the value area high while being extremely mindful of the POC. Cubic is kind of close to the same kind of journey. It's inside of its previous value area, right? And we're coming down right now for the retest of that value area's POC. But if we get that higher high, we get proper acceptance into the value area, and then we can anticipate for potentially coming up to its value area high again. And from where we currently are to that value area high is 48%, I guess, yeah, 48% move. So it could be a pretty massive move. We have its newly populated 200 EMA that could drive the price down. And it looks like we hit a key area right here and got a rejection. Kind of front run to that move. So because it's been so violent with its moves, it looks like it's correcting sooner than everything else. We lost this uptrending momentum, the buyer support level, and then we got a change character break, and we had the VWAP on its back. So it's on its way down. We're actually at a demand zone right as we speak. So this area is actually a potential area of interest where we can anticipate a potential reversal. But if we go beyond this area, we have quite a bit of confluence as well right here at this previous POC at 1545, which is also where this local support is. So if we breach this zone and we don't get the change of character reversal, let's see here. I just gotta send this back, sorry. Yeah, if we don't get the change of character reversal here, and we instead get a continuation, then here's where I anticipate the next area of concern for a potential reversal. So if you're in any shorts, we're in a zone where you need to be paying attention. And right here is the next area we got to pay attention to. If we get the change of character reversal, then we can start targeting these local lows here as potential target for a long. So if we deviate further down, it'd be kind of best for us So we have a better R&R to a target like that. If we instead get a continuation instead of a rejection off these lows, then you can anticipate that retest to the 200 EMA and potentially the value area high for a cubic. But that's pretty much it for cubic. We got a decent bounce right now as we speak off this demand zone. And how I identified this demand zone for anyone who's new, what you want to look for in the price action is like an impulse move, a base where a pullback of 2 candles at least occurred, and then another impulse move. And then what usually ends up occurring, we normally build order blocks off of moves like that. So sometimes you have order block confluence. We didn't have it this time. But you can anticipate residual buy orders in these areas, because a lot of times when we have those quick moves, those buy orders aren't filled. So when we come back to return, we end up filling those orders. But yeah, let's try to catch up from the chat here. Do worry about the other channels. This is the place to be. Oh, thanks, man. Small range. We made up there since yesterday. Wagner saying here, more or less, over the macro value area low, what do you consider an acceptance into the previous macro value area? Oh yeah, so like, just to go over that again really quick. Like proper acceptance for me is when the very first break of structure occurs inside the value area. And I'd prefer if it's an aged value area, something that's been around for a few months or maybe even a year, you'd want to have that break of structure pullback and higher high on like the daily. But I usually accept something as low as like the 4-hour and hourly time frame sometimes here. So I would rather have like a 4-hour break of structure for proper acceptance on something like this, just based on the posture. But the hourly for me, I don't think it's enough. We can see us grabbing a potential liquidity and just running out really quickly. When we look at the last time we came in here, right? We jumped in, right? In the 4-hour, for example, we jumped in, we pulled back, we failed to create the higher high, and then we just plummeted. Here we just got a wick. So in the lower time frames, we might have got a break of structure for a potential like continuation, built bearish divergence, whatever, right? But we didn't get the proper acceptance in the 4-hour. So so I'd prefer like a 4-hour or higher most of the time with aged value areas like this. If the value area is only like 6 days old or a week old, then like an hour, like a 15 minutes enough for me. I'll be fine with a 15-minute break of structure for that acceptance. All right, Bitcoin. Get a rejection off this local value area right now. So yeah, cubic, an area where we prepare for a potential long. SUI, I'm more prone to whatever Bitcoin's doing. SUI is likely going to do. If you look at the difference between the two assets, they're pretty correlated. So we break this low, we might have a short-term short down to here. If you're not comfortable shorting against the macro trend like this, then just don't take the trade and just wait for the long bias trade setup. And then you can have positioning ready around this zone for a potential long instead. Because I completely understand making sure you're trading alongside the macro trend and just sticking to your buys. Even if you see a short setup and not taking it, like that sometimes is a win in itself, because that's when you're trading alongside the macro trend, you statistically will have a higher win rate. So you can wait for the long setups and stay away from the short setups. Can we look at ONDO? Yes, we can. So, that's one of my favorite RWA assets. Let's see what's going on there. Last time we looked at it was April 14th on the 15-minute time frame. Let's see. So ONDO looks like it's hitting one of my trend lines here. Let's zoom out really quick. I have it marked as a key area that we need to break. So ONDO is in this descending channel, as most of you might already know. We had a moment where we had a break into a previous value area here, but we only dipped down there momentarily, grabbed a lot of liquidity, and then double bottomed on the lower time frames. Well, the 4 hour, you can see it clearly. And we had a double bottom structure here. That was ascending double bottom, and that helped induce a move to the upside. And we got acceptance back inside this previous value area here. Played around inside it for a little bit, and now we're at like a key area where like a lot of liquidity is stacked from these local highs here, because we kept creating like wicks. We're adding a bunch of short liquidity, and now we came up, we grabbed it all, and we're trying to potentially, we need to have the confluence of the break of the momentum, where the pace of the sellers are consistently selling alongside this momentum line here, right? And so we get the confluence of a break of that momentum and this local high, and see a break of structure or support. Then we can see it driving up to start grabbing all the liquidity on the upside, just like Bitcoin currently is. We can clearly also see a massive inverse head and shoulders posture, right? With the left shoulder here, the head here, the right shoulder here. The measurable based target for something like that is pretty aggressive. And you'd think that they won't hit their targets, but they usually do. Actually, if you want to know a fun statistic, inverse head and shoulders are actually more likely to hit their targets than any other structure in crypto. You could back test that. Like, I'd recommend back testing the crap out of that, so you can find out your probability of being able to execute on these setups, because they're usually pretty wild. And it's a result of stacking liquidity. If you think of like what's going on in the background, right? We are grabbing liquidity from the downside. We're stacking more and more above us, allowing more purchasing power for when we have that break. And it usually drives, based on the momentum, the volume of the structure, that helps define where we're likely to go. But again, you want to make sure you're watching your barriers along the way up, because just because we have a target doesn't mean it's going to be hit. And right now we have the 200 EMA in our face. We're above the 50 in confluence with that break, and we have a bunch of liquidity above us. It's actually relatively fast paced from here to here. If we're looking at the volume, we should anticipate that price action should move quickly on the way up the same way it did on the way down. So we'll see if we get to this zone here where most liquidity is here, where we can anticipate people using this as exit liquidity around 120. So 120 is the next key area once we break this area. And that's a 20% move. So we'll see if we'll get it. There's definitely going to require some time to build structure around this area to help define that target, though. We'll leave this on the chart. We'll see how it progresses. SUI was a bit of a shocker for me. I didn't think it would hit that target that quickly. But again, like, Bitcoin's just been nonstop running. Would you use volume profiles to find possible targets or take profits? Yeah, definitely, for sure. So you can use volume profiles. There's, I call them valleys, these price gaps right here. And these valleys can help define where price action is likely going to move quickly, right? And then you'll have these volume peaks right here, where you can anticipate volume to like basically come at a halt, because it's actually an area of interest, a huge area of interest where a lot of traders were buying and selling in this location. So points of control can be used as potential targets or areas of concern that you want to watch. So if you have a target that requires you to breach a point of control, then you're going to have to be very cautious and set alarms at a point of control in case it induces a reversal against your trade. When you're looking at it in a more macro sense, you can also help use them as a tool for entries too. So if you are, let's see, I need to find a really good example for you. So it's, well, let's just pretend over here. We might not have a good example. The candles aren't populated yet. But let's see. Let's just pretend for a second, just to draw scenarios. I do this kind of trade setup all the time whenever they occur. But basically, let's say we have a double bottom posture right here, and the neckline is basically combating a volume shelf like this. If we have just a candle close inside of a valley like this, we normally do not get a retest, right? Because the price action will tend to be moved really, really quickly in that valley until we get to the next volume shelf. So you got to watch those zones when you're looking for your like key level to be broken for like a change of character occurrence, for example, that we might have a quick move and it might not come back down to retest your zone. If you'd rather wait for the retest, if that's a part of your rules, then you can visualize the pathing because of how the price action evolved and how the valley area evolved by seeing potential rejection off the volume shelf, pull back to the next volume shelf, and then a higher high. And then you might get your like scenario that you need for your rules to be aligned. Because I know there's confirmation traders, they have a higher win rate and they prefer structure like this before jumping in. I'm actually usually one of those, but if I see a big enough valley, like say this was like much, much bigger, and we have more distance away, I would normally jump in right on the candle close if there's a volume gap. And then watch out at the volume shelf. Because like there's a lot of zones where if we only traded there for maybe a few hours, like this for example, it could evolve to become the POC. So you got to watch all these like peaks, areas of interest, because they can all act as forms of barriers towards your measurable targets. Like here's a slight decent example. We got a closer inside like the gap, but I guess this is not a very good example. I didn't expect for it to hit my target that quickly. But yeah, there's lots of ways you can use volume profiles to help assist you in your trades. Previous value or lows, previous value or highs, previous POCs, acceptance into previous areas, and you can anticipate it to behave the way it did last time it was in that area, kind of thing. What else do you guys want to look at? I've got 10 more minutes, and then I got to do a call with the community where we're going to kind of like continue off of what we're doing and hopefully find a trade setup. Let's see. Inverse perpetual angle with Bitcoin against Ethereum. Well, inverse perpetual, if you're looking for an inverse perpetual setup, which means for anyone who doesn't know what that means, it's kind of been rebranded. It's now called like coin margin, where you're using an asset as collateral to earn more of that asset. So if you're trading Bitcoin in inverse perpetual, you're going to be earning and losing your Bitcoin when you do your trades. And it's an insanely fast-paced way of accumulating wealth. It's also a quick way to lose all your Bitcoin or your asset if you don't know what you're doing. But once you figure out your rules, especially macro-based rules, you can get amazing. It's the core reason where I'm at when it comes to trading. Like I grew my portfolio from 1 Bitcoin to 10, and then 10 to 40 by doing inverse perpetual under like 2 massive trades. And I had proper risk for the second one. For the first one, not so much. Like my stop loss is basically liquidation. I could have lost like $10,000, but if you're looking for like hexacord, so if I say your name wrong, if you're looking for an inverse perpetual setup, you kind of want to, I normally recommend looking for a more swing-based kind of structure. You want aged ranges. You don't want like short-term stuff, because normally the slippage on coin margin is pretty rough. So you want make sure you're getting yourself in a really good position of strength so you can have some space towards your exit. I would normally recommend at least like 1 to 4s or greater when it comes to risk to reward ratio, when it comes to like using inverse perpetual. Real talk trading. Brian, how you doing, man? Again, BNB. We could look at BNB. I love BNB. BNB is the most underspoken about asset right now when it comes to network tokens. Is performing way better than any other network token, or at least any of the older ones. If we zoom out, as a community, we took this massive trade right here when we broke this like 1,000-day momentum, and our target was the macro golden pocket, but we broke right past that, and we've been using it as support. Typically, macro golden pockets require give you really harsh rejections, and then we normally stabilize for a potential continuation or reversal from there. Unfortunately, most of the community got out during that range, but it was a tough trade to hold. I did a spot buy, and I did a futures trade on that. All right, so if we zoom in on where it's currently at and what it's currently doing, we have this value area range where it began as a pennant. We got the good break. We hit that target. And then we came back down, got acceptance into the value area, and we kind of like been bouncing around aggressively. Got like a Wyckoff model here that helped define this move. And now we have like 3 taps again. So, but they're uptrending, which means we're stacking more and more liquidity, which means this is more of a threat to be taken again before coming back up. Doesn't mean it has to, but it definitely means it's more likely. So we're still behaving off this previous value area here. And we're at the previous value area high. We could pull a fixed range because we have multiple changes of characters in this area where we can define this as its own local range. So we can see the pairing confluence between the previous value area and the active value area. So we can see that right now the previous value area high is relatively close to the same core area of interest to this value area. We got a POC here, and the value area low is relatively close to the previous points of control where that was at its core area. Now it's the value area low of this structure. So we can watch those 4 levels now in confluence with each other and see how it's going to manipulate the price action's behavior. We recently broke this high here when we had a decent pullback. We grabbed liquidity, it broke past the POC. We're now testing this local high. Not sure if that's taken. I'm gonna mark my wick with a magnet. Yeah, it's a hairline. It definitely was taken. It was what likely induced the drop. We could have had a SFP structure there. And we had an SFP here, and we drove the price down a little bit into this local demand zone here, which is relatively weak. It's like a 5-minute demand zone. I wouldn't consider it a proper one to 15, but we bounced off it as support and came back up, built a double top structure, and we're currently potentially confirming it as resistance as we speak. So what we need to confirm in this neckline as proper resistance, we just mark this as a horizontal line here. So this is our core area of interest. Turn off that magnet, it's driving me crazy. And now all we need is the lower low to be taken. This is more of a later entry. You could have jumped in during the local SFPs here, but we're at an area where it's going to make it or break it, right? We broke the momentum, but we didn't get the higher. We need to have like this double bottom structure confirm here. If we get the lower low instead, the full body candle closure above, like below this area here at 609, then we can use this high as our stop loss guard, and we can find the measurable base target of this double top. And it tells us basically that the target's the POC based on the momentum. Unfortunately, the R&R might not be there. So if we get the close below and there's no like safe place to put your stop loss, because unfortunately right now this is the only safe spot that's likely going to be guarded. You want to be putting your stop loss, your capital, right? You want to be putting your money where it's likely going to be guarded by a market maker or other trade participants. And this right now, if this breaks, this becomes the strong high, and you'd want to make sure that your stop loss is above like a strong high or strong low most of the time. So the R&R might not be there. If you look at like the area where you're participating in the confirmation and the target, and it's only a 1-to-1. So be risking to lose the same amount that you're trying to gain. And you want to be trying to gain 2 times more or better, right? 2 times more or greater what you're trying to risk to lose. I'm not saying that we won't get continuations past this POC, but that's your core barrier. If we break past that core barrier, then you can start targeting other areas of interest, like 596 and 588, and then 577. And then lastly, you can start targeting around the value area low. So these are all areas where you want to set an alarm to see how we react. Because if you get those double bottoms or change character occurrence that's opposing against your direction, then you got to potentially be taking some money off the table. That is pretty much it for BNB. Smash the like button. Thanks, man. Well, I gotta go, guys. It was really fun hanging out. But again, I'll be doing these lives every morning to help you get ready for your TA for the day. So we'll always start from Bitcoin, and then we'll work our way in to see what's trending, right? And SUI was the main thing that we looked at today. And then we'll take any requests that you guys have as well to help you with your assets that you like to trade. But we got quite a bit of setups that we can prepare for. We got BNB for a potential short. If we break this neckline, then we'll likely be coming back up here and generating a local range in the zone. BNB, we're preparing. There's a sell confluence area here that we kind of want to have like a 5-minute or 3-minute change of character occurrence here. We'll prepare for a short and target the value area low. If we instead get the higher high closure here, please be aware of the amount of liquidity that's up here. We could just get, if we get a full body close here instead of the confluence that we're looking for here, then we're likely going to move to 95.4. SUI, we are at the measurable target for the double bottom structure that we spoke about yesterday with the community. We just teleported there. There wasn't very much resistance along the way. But we're starting to get acceptance into this previous value area with SUI, so we can get a potential move to $3. And that will likely come in confluence with Bitcoin getting to 95.4K, where all that liquidity is. So make sure you're watching Bitcoin, because Bitcoin has a lot of pairing influence over SUI. Can we start with your pre-trade charts when we do this, like the DXY? Yeah, we can do that. We can look at the DXY, stuff like that, and pair that with our morning TA, which is something I usually do anyways, but DXY moves insanely slow. Like today, like we were watching yesterday, this was the core area of interest that we were watching for its potential reversal in the double bottom. But the DXY, like the valuation of the US dollar, is in a lot of danger right now. Like we broke a really, really big core key area at 99.22. And when we broke that, it gives us the opportunity for acceptance back inside the zone. And we can see the DXY coming down to as low as like 95.77 and 91 if we breach past that. And why this matters, because everything here, you need, the DXY is your purchasing power for assets. So if it's going down in value, everything else goes up in value, because everything's like kind of inversely correlated to it. So because it takes more US dollars to buy the assets, right? If this goes down, Bitcoin tends to go up in confluence with it. And so far, it's following it to a T with a massive correction here, and we're seeing a massive pump with Bitcoin. But this area is a huge conduit for Bitcoin's moves too, other than the stacking liquidity that's been going on with Bitcoin from a massive short squeeze that's been under. Deborah, see you in the Zoom. I got the notification. Yeah, I'll see you guys very shortly in the Zoom. We'll see if we can find some trade setups. We're looking like we're getting close to a potential setup with Bitcoin and SUI and BTC. We got a couple things we're looking at. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next live. See you tomorrow morning at 8 for anyone who can attend. Let's try to grow this channel as big as we can. If you want to share this to your friends, anyone who's struggling with learning, because I love to answer questions for the little guy who's trying to figure this stuff out. Because I know what it's like trying to figure all this stuff out. It feels like a maze. But if you do things in the proper order, it actually becomes a lot easier. All right, guys. You have yourself an amazing day, and thanks a lot for watching.